Ladies and gents, boys and girls, hello and a very warm welcome to the Bio workshop once more. Now, after the last video, which was the boat race 2024 analysis, the men's boat race analysis, there were a couple of questions about, hey, what about these force curves and when should you use your legs and how long and when the upper body, and explain the details. So time to make a video to explain how I personally see this, how it works best based on 25 years of experience rowing with force curves on a bio rower. Now this bio row is something special because for the first time we're using actually rowing shoes. So these are Ruderschuhe, that's I think the brand's name, the Thomas Lange Gold Edition. So I'm sure everything is going to be significantly better with these. But joking aside, they actually feel quite good. And there's an adapter plate for the bio rower, so we can actually mount these shoes on bio rowers. And I think it looks sleek and it feels good. Just like in a boat, you just feel solidly connected with everything. Makes a lot of sense. Feels good. Okay, so the bio rower app is running. I'm in signal mode. And in order to understand what's going on, let's do a quick recap. So you have to watch the red curves and the green curves. So red is right, like in a boat. Green is left, like in a boat. And if I start to pull, you see a bottom curve and a top curve in red. The bottom curve is the force curve. So on the left y-axis, you see the newtons, 0, 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. That scale changes if you pull more newtons. And we have to distinguish between watts and newtons. Newton is a momentary force. Watts are the power. So how do you calculate that? That's important to know. So Newton is a momentary force. If you apply a certain force over a certain path, in our case, angles, then you get work. And if you calculate work over time, you get the watts. You can't cheat watts on a bio rower pro. It's just not possible because there's strain gauges. We measure watts exactly the way it should be measured, namely with force curves and angle sensors. So talking about the angles, if you watch the top curve, the top right curve now, you see, that seems to be correlated with something else. Right on the right side, you have a y-axis that shows you the degrees. So right now I'm at 0. The often mentioned 0 degree position, which is where the blade is exactly next to you, propelling the boat in the best possible angle. If I'm going to the catch, you see that top curve drops to minus 30 degrees at the catch. So if that is 0, that is 30. And now we're going forward, that's minus 60. You see eventually it stops making sense because at that position, the blade, the imaginary blade on the outside, we don't have full oars on this one, but you can have it. We're pushing out. And this is why more stroke length at the catch really doesn't make much sense. This is not material we had in the 60s and 70s where we had soft wooden oars, soft riggers, soft boats, and our bodies were the hardest part about that. Today our bodies are the softest part. So we don't have to be that extra long anymore, but we have to be very direct. So if you correlate that, there's a very interesting point, namely when the angle curve crosses 0 and the force curve drops. And the most important thing to understand is what kind of shape do you actually want? How do you want that? Because we have the same on the left, same on the right. So if I use my upper body very early, it's very likely that I will create peak here, but there's not much upper body swing back I can use. That's a big problem because that is the stage where propelling the boat makes most sense. I know that we've started way before 0 and we're not going that far past 0. The question is why? The reason for that is that the blade from 0 to the finish, watch the angle curve go to plus 30 degrees, roughly 40 degrees, the blade is again pointing towards the boat. Now if you consider the fact that the boat is accelerating and on top the blade is changing its angle, it's very likely we will not be able to propel the boat much further. This is why it makes more sense to be farther at the catch than at the release, because here the angle is bad too, but the boat is relatively speaking slower. Therefore, we can compensate that bad angle. Now, when does it make sense to have most force on the blade? Well, when the blade is in the best possible angle to attack, which is between here and about there. Why more to the catch? Again, because the boat is relatively speaking slower, and here it's relatively speaking faster with an angle that is equally ineffective as this one. So we cut the finish short, so to say. We don't go that far back. We're going more into the catch than into the finish. Now, if you start to use your upper body early here, what happens? Two things. The first one is, if you can transfer all the force from your feet to your hands, which is what rowing is all about, what happens is that you do that. Okay, so if you do this, how do you want to have a layback here at the finish when propelling the blades or having load on the blade? We don't actually want to propel the blade, we want to propel the boat. Having load on the blade is the most important thing. There is no swing back you can use. That means you've wasted your upper body pivot potential already at the catch, at the cost of something else. Namely, if you add the upper body right here, what happens is that you trigger the entire posterior chain, which is the back extension chain. Now, the back extension chain is something we don't want to trigger right at the catch because there should be a solitary leg drive. Why? Because at the catch here, it doesn't make sense to create a peak because the boat cannot get and collect speed so quickly. There is a certain rate of acceleration that a rowing boat is subjected to, and we cannot rush it no matter what we do. So what we have to do is be patient. And that's the patience, all of us coaches try to convey at the catch. It's not legs first. That is actually not true, but I will come to this a bit later. It is the patience to move the entire construct of your body so that when the upper body swing starts, you can actually harvest the upper body potential when it matters most. Because rowing is not about legs and then upper body and then arms. Rowing is a delicate leverage game. We're going to use that leverage. This is the original rowing motion. That. And then we extend it by a bit of leg drive. Then the slides became longer. Aha. This is how we started to come to end up with today's stroke structure. So if you do this at the catch, you will very likely create that early peak and have a long wind down stroke towards the finish, which means when it matters most, let's change to balance mode, it's easy to grasp. You see the 0 point in the middle, that's an angle by force curve, it's easy to grasp. So past 0, that position, if I do that, I'm decreasing force on my blades when it matters most. Is this effective? No. Simply put, it's highly ineffective, especially if you're trying to have a continuous acceleration. One of the most important principles of rowing to understand, and I'm packing a lot of information in this video, is that we're trying to put force on a blade and keep force on a blade, although the boat is accelerating, or in the case of ROWING Pro, the flywheel is accelerating. So if I want to have continuous force on the blade, it means I have to add more momentum. Otherwise, the boat will run away from me. That is a stroke where the boat will run away from me. That is a stroke where I have continuous acceleration momentum. I have to add it. The question is, how do you add momentum with the upper body swing? So that way. The question is, what happens if I use the upper body at the catch? This. You can fake a lot of force curves in low steady state. You can fake them for 20 minutes. You might even be able to fake them for an hour. But you can't fake your force curves second half of a race. You're too tired, too wasted. So this is why it's a well-known, it's not a secret, it's a trick many coaches use. If you have a fresh team and you want it to work together well, you have them do a very long workout, an easy, let's say an 18, 20, 24 kilometer row, and then you see the true rowing styles. Then you see how people actually row for real. Okay, Now, what is the opposite? How do we trigger the upper body swing late? It has a lot to do with core stability. And now get to the second most important point of this entire video. It is not legs first, then upper body, then arms. It is also not upper body first, and then the rest of leg drive and arms. It is actually none of the three. None of the three. You know where rowers are the strongest? Upper section of the quads to the sternum. This is where we rowers are the strongest. Because rowing is all about me being able to control pelvis and hip. I say this in all the videos I've done recently because it's so vital to understand that. So if the most important point is to be able to hold off the natural tendency to open the upper body. How do you do this? You trigger the deep muscles. You trigger the transverse abdominis. How do you do this? You sit on the center to front part of the seat. When you achieve that, hands loosely away, just like I said in the video, don't overextend your arms. Hands loosely away, and now try to load the seat center to front and post correct. At that stage, try to have a long ventral chain, the front of your torso, long. As you come to the catch, post correct. Don't collapse and do that. See? The position of my seat changes. And then when you start the leg drive, post correct. Low back pushes forward, ventral chain pushes long, shoulders long and relaxed. And then when you start to drive, you really have to brace your core. Don't work with your arms. It's not necessary. So at that stage, if you try to brace, this is what we did in the Saturday classes. Join us, you will see what I'm talking about. Every Saturday, 45 minutes. When you hold with the ventral chain, it's much easier to hold the trunk stable. And then the upper body swing is not something where you throw your shoulders back. That's useless. You have to use your core. Your quads, flip the core open. And which part of the core? Try to trigger the ventral chain again. So your quads and your core, it's all here, open the trunk. So then it looks a bit like this. Beginners usually try to overextend the hands here and try to work with the arms. You use the peripheric muscles. Pro rowers know that you don't use the peripheric muscles. You use everything around the hip. As close as possible to the hip. The closer you are around the center of your core, the more effective this is going to be. So it's here. We don't even make much of there's no drama about, I'm not even pulling hard. All I do with my elbows is direct force out. The most important thing to understand is everybody's built differently. Everybody's built differently. So a tall person and a small person or an explosive athlete or endurance-based athlete will probably get tired in a different way, and they will influence the boat in a different way when the faking is over. This is when you prepare your athletes on a biro with force curves so that when they become tired, everybody still has the same effect on the boat. Plateau, late peak around zero. Plateau around zero. And the thing is, everybody needs to move a bit differently, visually speaking, in order to achieve that. So some people may need to use the upper body gradually a bit earlier because the upper bodies are longer. Some people achieve exactly the same result by using the upper body a bit later. And that's the third most important point about this video. You can't go by visuals alone if you have no idea about correlating force curves. Force curves matter more than optics. You can only go by optics and visuals if you have seen correlations between what a certain type of athlete looks like when they row and what kind of force curves they produce. This is when you can go by visuals. But for that, you need the experience. So some people might row like that. I've seen this with lightweights. Is it effective? No. But for some lightweights, they are actually able to pull perfect force curves like this. They can do that. Would it be better, hypothetically, if they did this? Of course. Hey, but nobody's perfect. However, if your back is weak and you create artificial bends and you do this, eventually, after 800 meters, 1,000 meters, on a 2K race, your back will give in because these muscles are not designed to withstand that. But that's a different topic, which muscles to use. If you want to learn more about which muscles to use and why and when, let me know. I'm getting out of these rowing shoes. They feel excellent. Good job. Well done. Feel great. So I hope this answers your questions. I'm sure there's much more to be explained. Let me know what you want me to do next. With this being said, thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next video. And if you have not subscribed, please do it right now. Only 30% of my viewers are subscribers. We need to change that. Thank you for liking and sharing. If you want to work with me, aramtraining.com. This beautiful thing here is a Barbell Pro. And now have a very good day. Thank you.